Hello everyone, how are you all doing out there? I'm Kate Hill, bringing you the best and unbiased and honest content on property, along with fantastic hints and tips. Today, stay tuned to hear why I think stopping overseas migration will not solve Australia's housing crisis. Now, of course, Australia's housing crisis is a complex issue fueled by a myriad of factors, including economic conditions, government policies, supply constraints, and population growth. While it might seem intuitive to blame overseas migration for exacerbating housing demand and driving up prices, reducing or even halting migration is really not the silver bullet to resolve the crisis. In fact, addressing the real underlying issues requires a broader approach that goes beyond merely restricting migration. Overseas migration has been a significant contributor, of course, to Australia's population growth. We need it. And admittedly, some see that as a negative thing. According to the ABS, net overseas migration accounted for 60% of the total population growth in the year ending June 2022. Migrants, particularly skilled workers and international students, play a crucial role in filling labour shortages, driving up economic growth and contributing to cultural diversity of this nation. It is true that increased migration contributes to housing demand, particularly in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne. But focusing solely on migration ignores the fact that domestic factors like natural population increase also drive demand. For instance, between 2010 and 2020, Australia's population grew by 3.5 million people, with natural increase accounting for over half that. Even in the absence of migration, the housing market would still face significant pressure from this natural increase alone. The primary driver of Australia's housing crisis is the inadequate supply of housing to meet demand. According to CoreLogic, in the decade leading up to 2022, housing supply fell short of demand by approximately 165,000 dwellings. This shortage has been exacerbated by a range of factors, including restrictive zoning laws, planning delays, insufficient infrastructure investment. The Reserve Bank of Australia has noted that the supply of new housing in Australia has been slow to respond to rising demand. This is particularly true in the major capital cities, where land use regulations, high construction costs, and limited land availability have made it really difficult to increase that housing stock. Consequently, even with reduced migration, the housing supply would remain constrained, continuing to drive up prices and rents. Curtailing overseas migration could have significant negative consequences for the Australian economy. Migrants contribute to economic growth by filling labour market gaps, particularly in sectors like healthcare, education and construction. The Australian Bureau of Statistics reported that in 2021, migrants accounted for 30% of the local workforce in Australia. Added to that, international students, who make up a significant portion of temporary migrants, contribute billions of dollars annually to the Australian economy through tuition fees, living expenses and other consumption. Reducing migration could lead to labour shortages, especially in critical industries, which would likely slow the economic growth, provide inferior services to the existing population. A weaker economy will in turn reduce the government's ability to invest in public housing and infrastructure projects, further exacerbating a housing crisis. Furthermore, a reduction in migration would not necessarily translate into lower housing prices. The RBA has pointed out that housing prices are driven by a combination of factors, including interest rates, credit availability, investor activity. In periods of low migration, other factors like lower interest rates, increased investor demand, they have continued to drive up housing prices, which we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's not forget that. It was only 3 or 4 years ago. So to effectively address Australia's housing crisis, it's a multifaceted approach which is required. Instead of focusing on migration, policymakers should prioritise measures that increase housing supply and improve affordability. Simplifying and streamlining the planning process could really help accelerate the approval and construction of new housing projects. Reducing the bureaucratic hurdles associated with zoning and development approvals would allow for a more responsive housing market. Investing in infrastructure such as transportation, schools, healthcare facilities in outer suburban and regional areas could encourage population growth outside of those major cities. This would help alleviate pressure on housing markets in Sydney and Melbourne, while it promotes balanced regional development, but of course adds to the demand over there. Expanding government programs that support the construction of affordable housing is crucial. Public-private partnerships, incentives for developers to include affordable housing in new developments, and increased funding for social housing could all contribute to easing the crisis. Addressing the tax incentives that favour property investors over first home buyers, such as negative gearing and capital gains discounts, will help level the playing field. This will reduce speculative investment in the housing market, which has been a significant driver of price increases. So while overseas migration does of course contribute to the housing demand, I'm not denying that, it is not the root cause of Australia's housing crisis. The real issue lies in the chronic undersupply of housing and the structural factors that restrict the ability of the market to respond to increasing demand. Halting migration is not only an ineffective solution, but could have a broader negative economic consequence. Instead, a comprehensive approach that addresses housing supply, infrastructure investment, and planning reform is necessary to tackle the crisis effectively. Stopping overseas migration is not the answer to the crisis. Addressing fundamental issues that drive shortages and unaffordability requires a more nuanced and targeted strategy. So I will keep you posted on all things property from around Australia as our year progresses. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're enjoying all the free content, and I will see you all soon. Bye.